Hi, greetings. It's me, Dr. Paul Gerhardt, and this is the last video in my labor relations and collective bargaining video. And this video really is about giving you a little bit of history and understanding the importance of why unions came about and give you some things to consider. And not that I think we're going to revert back, but I do think that the pendulum does swing both ways, and there's a lot to be learned by history and understanding why organizations chose unions and how unions came into development, and that they really are important, and that's important for you to consider no matter what side of the table that you sit on. In this video, we'll talk a little bit about globalization, worldwide labor movement, the International Labor Organization, European unions, and the Far East. So let's get into globalization. What is globalization? It's the expansion of international trade in goods and services, and the degree of interdependence that goes along with the integration of production across national boundaries and the resulting increase of international investment by multinational enterprises. We have to consider in every industry that we are in a global marketplace, no matter what industry you're in. So being able to think globally as a leader truly can help you be more successful in your career and help your organization move forward. Remember, every person or human resource in your organization makes the organization stronger or weaker. And so as leaders, it's all about making the best decisions possible. A little bit of history for you. We talk a lot about FDI, or foreign direct investment. And that is a category of international investment made by a direct investor in a direct investment enterprise with the objective of establishing a lasting interest. You also may have heard the term, or maybe work for, a multinational enterprise. And multinational enterprises are entities that operate in more than one nation for a significant portion of its business, that may export products, and that may actually have moved part of its operations to another country by investing abroad. Financial markets are also something to consider. After World War II, a money exchange rate system was put into place to provide a degree of international exchange rate stability. This resulted in the creation of the international financial institutions, such as the International Monetary Fund and World Bank. There has been some deregulation and liberalization, and as a result of the global, regional, and bilateral trade and investment negotiations, countries have lowered barriers to trade and investment by liberalizing trade quotas, tariffs, deregulated national capitals, and controls. And of course, governments of each of the different nations play a huge part in the success of their own economies, and they have to recognize their relationship in this global marketplace. Trade unions have come about, and they formed at the national level, and today are always being challenged by globalization. So the challenge facing trade unions in the era of globalization is to ensure that structural change and adaptation are achieved without compromising the goals of full employment and social justice. The industrial revolution, through the invention of innovation, enterprises, substituted machinery for human labor. By using new chemical and other processes, harnessed new forms of energy for fuel production. This resulted in the emergence of factories with large concentrations of workers, and there's an interdependence of production processes that are required, a hierarchical style of management, and a clear division of labor. So over time, organizations had to evolve in order to be successful. The democratic revolution, there was a change in monarchs being replaced by representative government. The capitalist revolution took place, where a market economy was replaced by more of a mercantile system, and that brought private property ownership in labor markets, and with that came trade unions. The growth of trade unions over the years had a few major roles. With the market function, they represent and advance the employment interests of its members through collective bargaining as workplace representatives. The class function, this is with fight battles for the rights and interests of all workers to increase workers' status and power in the economic and political systems. And then, of course, the social function, which improves the overall quality of life of workers, promoting greater social justice, better schools, and health care. With a government response, first with suppression, then tolerance, and then finally encouragement. So some eye-opening taking place within the government world. You can't beat them, join them. International labor organizations was created as a parallel organization to the League of Nations, with a mission to keep the peace within societies threatened by class divisions between capital and labor. And again, international labor organizations is often referred to as the ILO. So there really are 9 written principles into the ILO Constitution. Labor should not be treated as a commodity. Workers have the right to organize. Workers should get a reasonable wage to maintain a reasonable standard of living. Work should be limited to an 8-hour day or a 48-hour work week, and a 1 day of rest each week. Also, no child labor came into place, equal pay for equal work, equitable treatment of immigrants, and the enforcement of labor laws. With a organizational structure which is unique to the ILO, government structure in which governments, employers, and workers are equal parties. The main work of the ILO was to enact international conventions and make recommendations regarding labor. The Anglophone countries, Great Britain being the main one, Industrial Revolution began in Great Britain, and the first factories that were textile productions were started in around the 1740s. In 1868, the Trade Union Congress came about, and trade unions began to have success lobbying for labor laws. Shop stewards began in World War I, and Winston Churchill formed the first political labor party government in World War II, and then there was voluntarism, which is considered laissez-faire. In Canada, another Anglophone country, in 1919, the Winnipeg General Strike led to collective bargaining. It was largely cooperative with laissez-faire labor relations, and the greater union membership had greater union membership than in the United States. Australia is another Anglophone country, and they had a pretty unique labor history. In 1904, the federal compulsory conciliation arbitration of labor disputes came about, and Workplace Relations Act, or the WRA, streamlined systems and created more emphasis on enterprise bargaining. It curbed union power and put restrictions on strikes, and also streamlined unfair dismissal systems that limits frivolous appeals and compensation plans. The European nations, or the EU, is a regional body made up of 27 member states on the continent of Europe that delegate their sovereignty on questions of joint interest to common institutions which represent the interest of the EU as a whole. The EU member states are not one single new nation. The Treaty of Maastricht in 1992 enhanced the European Union through intergovernmental cooperation and added new forms of cooperation between the member states, particularly on defense and in the area of justice and home affairs. In Germany, trade unions negotiate wage agreements, work councils negotiate working conditions, and co-determination gives employees seats on a board. In France, there's a strong legacy of class conflict, and after World War II emerged as a major economic power, the collective bargaining legislation names the employers and employees bodies that have representative status. Negotiations can be carried out at all levels of economic activity. In Italy, formed due to the 1789 French Revolution, and industrial relations are governed by constitution, acts of parliament, regional laws, customs and practice, and also European Union. And in Japan, in the Far East, industrialization began in the late 1880s, and there were different holding companies and 3 historic premises of Japanese labor to consider. Lifetime employment is part of the culture. Most employees are retained for their lifetime. Seniority, pay raise based on service, and then enterprise with the employer based on unions. In China, Mao established centralized planned government after World War II, planned economy of set wages, prices, and employment, gave it more of a socialistic market economy, and changed the state-owned to state-owned market enterprises. So it really is important to consider how each of the different countries affect the economies in other countries. And so once we understand that we are in a global marketplace, as leaders, we each need making big picture decisions, and as I always emphasize, with win-win involved for all of the stakeholders. So that in a nutshell, ladies and gentlemen, is what I have to share about what I think you should know about global industrial relations, where it came, why it's important. It's hard to change a wheel's direction once it gets moving, but understanding why systems have been put in place really can help you make better decisions overall, so that the majority of stakeholders can continue to benefit from what's being offered. Thanks so much for your valuable time. I hope you've taken away something from this video, and even more importantly, I hope that you have a great day, because only you get to choose how you feel about it. I'm Dr. Paul Gerhardt.